Well, hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parco, and I'm here with Amy Tiemeyer, and we are the hosts of. There you go. All right, just want to warn you. They've been working outside my building all today, and I canceled multiple lives because of the sound. So if my signal dies, it's because they hit something. So
Good to know. Good to know.
all right, who's our guest today?
So let me bring him in. And absolutely. Our
You can't
guest
tell me who
today
he is. You have to
is,
bring him in first.
I do. Thank you for making life difficult, Ed.
No, it just and so Elliott, don't worry about being your first podcast and live and all this because Amy's this is not her first one, and she still gets nervous about things. So, which she shouldn't. It's not a big deal. It's just the three of us, and thousands of other people, but just the three of us.
Could just be just the two of us. Yeah. Okay.
It just didn't sound. I was trying for that, but there's three of us. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Amy. Explain who Elliott is for us today.
So Elliott, I met just in my mind pretty recently, back in January, and I met him when I went to MVP, which is merging vets and players, and I'm going to let Elliott talk about it later in his story. But both of us are through merging vets and players, we do peer-to-peer counseling after doing a workout, and it's a really great thing. But Elliott, we always start everyone off on why'd you pick the service you picked? And for those who don't know, Elliott picked the Army.
Well, it's just gonna, first of all, it's gonna work that way. They have the most people, so percentage wise of guests, you're gonna run into that more than Navy, Marines, and Air Force. Sorry.
Excuses. Oh, but anyhow, go on, Ed or Elliott.
Okay, yeah. So as Amy said, we met during our time at Emerging Vets and Players, but my journey into the Army was basically I went to a military boarding school, and one of the junior ROTC instructors, Sergeant First Class Kingston, he kind of made me want to join the Army. He was a infantry guy, Ranger, but we did this program called Raider Challenge. And just to give a little background, when I came in, my grandma used to tell me, I remember when you were this tall and this wide. So, and when I went to high school, my junior year, not my junior year, but my sophomore year, I joined the what's called the Raider Challenge. Now in college, there's the ROTC program has Ranger Challenge, but in high school and junior ROTC, it's called Raider Challenge. So I joined. I decided to do that. And Sergeant Kingston was just a motivator. He, as I was getting tired doing push-ups, he grabbed me by my collar and was pulling me up to have me keep on going. And then that just kind of stuck with me. And when I graduated high school, I actually, when I went to college, I did ROTC for about 6 months. And I kind of I thought this can't be really how it is in the actual military. So I took a semester of school off, went enlisted, and just as I was enlisting, 9/11 happened. And so 9/11 was the day I was supposed to go into MEPS and take the oath of enlistment. But September 13th was my actual enlistment date. And then I went to Jackson for basic training. And then I went to Fort Lee for my AIT. And I spent about 8 years, not 8 years. Roughly 8 years enlisted until I went into I earned my commission through OCS. I actually came back from an AIT up at Fort Lewis during the leadership development course that they do for the ROTC individuals, and this Sergeant Major, and again, another enlisted person, guiding me in the way, because I had just been accepted into the Warrant Officer Corps program. And I told him that. He's like, well, if you have your college degree, you should go become an officer. You're kind of plug and play. You can do a lot being an officer. And so as soon as I was done with my AIT, I went back to the same recruiting station in Lafayette, Indiana, that I went to enlist. And I told him I want to become an officer. And that was also around the same time when the Army was really trying to recruit officers, and they were pushing the OCS program. And funny story, while I was in OCS, they were actually recording the OCS commercial. So around like the 2-minute mark in that commercial, you'll see like a little bit of me because I'm holding the guide on. So I finished out my career. I retired. I was in medical retirement as an Army captain. And, it was hard. It was hard getting out. I mean, I landed on my feet pretty well. I started as a consultant, and then I went over.
Elliott.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a podcast. Yeah. Yes, it's a podcast.
Okay.
Take a break.
Okay.
All right.
Woo.
We got to ask. All right. Let us.
Okay.
As I tell with on radio, 1 to 3 minute answers, kind of do that so that we can have a conversation with you and keep it going. And
Okay.
I know it's new to you and it's great. And Amy and I are just like, okay, we'll go to sleep. You just keep telling your story because it's a great story. But what service did you pick? And we already got out. So when you went from, because I hear a lot of enlisted in the Army become officers. I mean, if you go back through our podcast, I mean, I'd say probably 50 to 60% of them. Is it a big thing that they push that?
It's not a big thing. I had a goal. I wanted to become an officer, but I also wanted to become an NCO first. So I wanted to have that leadership. I wanted to be able, I wanted that opportunity to lead soldiers, and then to even be a mentor to a brand new lieutenant who's coming in as well. So, and then have that same thing maybe happen to me as well. And that was the mindset for that.
Okay. And then how long were you in when you
were
medical?
About 15 years. So,
okay. And then you were medically retired.
Yeah. 2001 to 2016.
Okay. So I have a question.
Yes.
As a first lieutenant, or I guess as a second lieutenant.
Yep.
How different of a second lieutenant do you feel you were than somebody who went straight from college to OCS?
Come on, is that like a softball question?
It's obviously having a little bit more experience, because I had already had 2 deployments under my belt, and I actually had I think I had more deployments than my battalion commander too. But at the same time, it really doesn't. At that point, the playing field is leveled. So even if you're coming out of ROTC and OCS, you may have that experience, but you're still kind of like that. You're still the lowest man on the totem pole. You may know a little bit more than that brand new lieutenant, but that's where like that learning and that peer-to-peer mentorship happens as well.
Well, I would think you would know a lot more from being in the service as long as you were, and understanding everything with the service, right? Because I mean, you go through ROTC or OCS, you don't know everything you know as if you were in for 10 years before, and as enlisted, you know a lot. Plus, enlisted people, I don't want to say respect you more, but they understand that you rose up through the ranks, and that is respected a lot more. I'm not saying they don't respect other people, but it's just one of those things.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of my soldiers thought I was a West Pointer, so it wasn't until I told them, hey, I OCS, I was at E5. They're like, oh, okay, cool. So,
I got my degrees while I was in, but if I would have done it in the Navy, I would have been a line officer, which meant on ships all the time, and that's all there was, right? And that's not what I wanted to do. So, yeah. So people who go in the Army, I just think you have a better opportunity to become an officer and do pretty much what you're doing already. So,
yeah, and that's true. I mean, the one thing I was fortunate about was, at least when I was going through OCS, you could pick your branch. And I think now it's kind of changed where the cadre actually had the final say of which branch that you're going to be assigned to.
All right. So when you were transitioning out medically, This is Amy's question. She's all upset because I just took it from her. She'd see her back there. How was it transitioning? I mean, was there enough information as you were transitioning, going through the different classes, or did you think that they could have done more?
Well, so when I was transitioning out, I was actually doing my whole medical board through at Walter Reed. So there was a little bit more options that I was privileged to. So I had opportunities to work on the like at FEMA while I was transitioning out. So I had opportunities across the board just to work in these different federal business agencies, even like a short stint at the Pentagon. And it still was like, you know, I'm like, what do I want to do? Because I had all these options, but at the same time, I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think that's the biggest thing. So I went into consulting. I got an offer with a small consulting company, and that's where I felt, okay, you know, I can start from here and I can work my way up. But I was fortunate as well too, because while I was transitioning, I was hired into the federal sector through Homeland Security, and I had to wait a year because of the clearances and whatnot. But I knew at least I had something waiting for me at the end, because they kept emailing me asking me if I was still interested in the position because they were taking so long. But it was still a hard transition because I didn't have that same camaraderie as I did when I was in the military. It's like I'm going to a new job, and I'm introducing myself to everybody, and either they like you right off the bat, or they don't, or they don't want to work with you because you're new and you have these new ideas, and they're saying, you know, like, I'm going to be here a lot longer than you, so it doesn't really matter. I don't care about your new ideas. So it was a lot of kind of push and pull, and it kind of just made me feel a little less wanting to put that effort in, as I compared to if I was in the military. If I was in the military, you know, that effort is really rewarded, and you feel good when you're done. So
now, this might be, I don't know if you talk, I don't know everything about you, Elliott, but yeah. You were retired medically. Is this something from a deployment or? Yeah,
so it was I had lower back surgery. It was a L5, L6 spinal decompression. Basically, when I was deployed, my left side, the sciatic nerve was pinching my spine was pinching my sciatic nerve. When I was deployed, my left side kind of went numb a little bit, and then when I finally when I was medevac to Walter Reed, my right side. So like for about 2 months, I couldn't walk because of the pinched nerve. So when the surgery was complete, I was pretty much told, you know, you could stay in, but this is really more of a disqualifier because of the surgery. So,
and you said, I'm out of here.
I was like, you know what? I had a GS-15 that told me, he was a retired Air Force colonel, and he's like, the Army's going to divorce you before you divorce it. So make your choice.
Right. Yeah. Move on. Go ahead, Amy.
That's awfully sweet advice.
Yeah.
But you know, I kind of feel that way on a general basis. It's better to stop things on your terms. So after so are you still working for the consulting firm, or what are you doing now?
Oh no, I'm pretty sure, like most veterans, when they get out, they kind of bounce around from job to job, and that's pretty much what I did, trying to find my place, trying to find like where I fit in. So I actually, because I was living in DC, I moved from DC to Seattle, Washington, started working with a startup company. Then I moved back into a consulting role, and still kind of not really figuring out like where I fit in this world, I guess. Like, and it kind of just wore me down, because like in my mind, I'm thinking like, I know I'm capable of doing so much more. Like, I've done all this stuff in the military. Like, I've met with world leaders. Like, I've done all this stuff, and here I am just punching numbers and getting paid nothing, or not getting the respect that I feel like I deserve. And I think that was the mindset. So I always had this grudge of I'm not doing enough to get where I want to be, or always looking at other people and comparing where I'm at to where other people are at. And that really kind of just broke me down a little bit, because I was going through I was getting in my head a lot. And it really, it really kind of wore me down to the point where I'll talk about it, but it's like, I was at a point where, we talk about rock bottom. I hit rock bottom when I was, I walked 11 miles in the rain to almost jump off of a cliff, and staring down a black abyss, hearing the ocean and thinking, if I do this, this is it. Like, or I can maybe work on this and do something to get out of this mind frame. And that's what I did. How did you get out of that mind frame? So I actually, and it's great that you asked that. There's a lot of things that I wasn't doing to really fill my cup, as I say. And it really was something like I always volunteered. I was always doing something like to give back. And that was something that I hadn't done in a long time. So the first thing I did was I actually went online and I looked up a veteran service organization's volunteers. And the first thing that popped up was the Mission Continues. And I was fortunate that they were having an event that weekend. So I actually went, I sit on my calendar. It's like, I'm going to do this. I am going to go to this event. I'm going to get out of my apartment. I'm going to go to this event. And, I'm driving around trying to find this blue tent. And because there's no actual address, it's just like a direction, like we're going to be here between these buildings. And so I'm looking, and I'm driving all around downtown Seattle trying to find this blue tent, and I can't find it. And I'm telling myself, like, I have to do this. I have to do this. And then there was like one point when I just thought, I'm not going to, like, I'll just chalk this up as a loss. I'll do something different. But then I stopped myself. And I said, no, we need to find this. So I found the blue tent, and then I ran into Andrew Gustal, who's the platoon leader for the Seattle chapter of the Mission Continues. And the first thing I said to him was, hi, my name is Elliott. I'm not doing that well. And he's like, oh. And he's like, what? He's like, well, I'm glad you're here. And then I met another veteran named Jason Jarman, and he was telling me about MVP. But because I had told him, I was like, I'm about to go into the American Lake intensive PTSD program. And he's like, I just got back from there, man. He's like, that is a great program. He's telling me about, like, he's telling me, like, this is a great program. If you put in the effort, you're going to come out a brand new person. You're going to come out with this great mindset. And when I saw how he was, that gave me hope, knowing that if I go through this program, I may be just as happy as this guy. And I was fortunate because, I got his phone number and I got Andrew's phone number, but Jason was always checking in with me when I was at American Lake. And it just made me feel like, hey, there's this community that cares about me now. And I just went to my first MVP meeting as well. And everybody's, I told everybody my story, and it was this community that understood, that was empathetic about what I was going through. And then when I went to American Lake, I always logged in. Like, I always logged into every meeting, every MVP meeting, just because, like, that made me happy. That was something where I don't have to talk all the time like I'm doing right now. I don't have to talk all the time, but I can listen, and I can see that there's other people who are going through the same struggles, and listening to how they got out of their dark place. And like I I've mentioned this before to a few people, but I had this aha moment, and I'm at American Lake, and I'm talking to the therapist about my suicide attempt. And as I'm leaving her office, I go back to my dorm room, and I'm reading this Yahoo News article about this rapper named Logic, whose song has probably saved millions of lives because it's a suicide hotline. The title of the song is a suicide hotline. And I was like, well, let me hear this song. So when I listened to it, I started to cry because I actually, the words that he was talking about, he did it in three perspectives. It was about a person who wanted to kill themselves, and then also like why they wanted to kill themselves. And then they're telling the person on the suicide hotline all of this information. And then the person on the suicide hotline is telling them, why they want them to live. And there's this line in there when that they say, what is the darkness? What is the darkness without a little light? And, that one line, then at the end, the person says, I want to live. Like, I want to live right now. Like, I want to live my life. And that was my aha moment. And we had another group counseling session. And we were told then to kind of like close our eyes and visualize our 90th birthday. Who's there? What do we see? And I'm not married. I don't have any kids, but like, here I am at 90 years old. I'm celebrating in this. I'm visualizing myself at 90, still bald, but I'm okay with that.
It doesn't grow back.
It doesn't grow back. It does not grow back.
Once it's gone, it's gone. It's just,
exactly. But I'm sitting there, and I have my wife, and we're laughing. We have all of our kids and our grandkids. And as things are kind of winding down, my son stands up and says, Dad, thank you for making me the man I am today. And when I told that to the therapist and to the group, I was crying, and they asked, why am I crying? And I just said, although this isn't happening right now, like I was going to deny myself this life. And that really changed a lot for me. So when I left American Lake, my mindset went full 180. Like, I was no longer my own worst enemy, but I was my cheerleader. I was my own cheerleader. There's like, I don't wake up. There's not a moment that I don't wake up where I'm not in a mood of just like telling myself, hey, great job. I'm very competitive, and if I'm not pushing myself, before it was always, man, you could have done better. I can't believe you didn't do this. But in my mind now, I'm telling myself, hey, good job. Like you did it, you finished it. That's awesome. So just changing that mindset really made me really change my outlook on life and how I approach a lot of things. Like, I don't dwell, I don't ruminate. There's a lot of things that I don't do now that have really made my life a lot better. Like, I'm probably the happiest I've ever been my entire life, and I can say that because it's true.
All right. So, are you done?
Yeah, I'm done. Podcast.
You're doing just fine.
Yeah, it's great information you're giving. It's just we'd like to be part of the conversation too, if you don't mind. Yeah. No, I mean, but we don't want to interrupt because you're giving really good information, and we want people to understand that. So, how long and I don't know if I missed this, but how long have you been in the MVP?
I've been in MVP since I want to say November of 2021.
Okay, so all right.
Very short time frame, but it's helped. But it's been.
But this is phenomenal. So recently you've been through this. What you were talking about. Okay, so this is a more recent episode. I didn't get that in your conversation. I kind of took it as you were talking. It was a longer process.
No, this was last. This was last
wow.
October. Yeah.
Wow. And so we all transition through, after we get out, and we do many different jobs like you're talking about. And now you're doing this. Are you doing anything else besides?
Yeah. So I actually, I volunteer. I'm the volunteer program coordinator at MVP.
Okay.
But I work for a consulting company,
Okay.
doing program management, for IT companies. So
Okay. So looking back on your career, and if you were talking to somebody today who's thinking about going in the Army, what would you tell them?
do it. Make sure you pick the right branch, the right.
All right. So when you say branch, you mean inside the Army, right?
Yes. So if you're going to enlist it, make sure you are in the right MOS that you want to be a part of, because recruiters are about numbers, and sometimes they want to fill certain positions first. But I think it all depends on what that person wants to do. If you want to be a cook, tell them you want to be a cook in the Army. If you want to become an officer, tell them you want to go through OCS. If you want to do special forces, tell them you want to go through the special forces program, because those options. I think there's a lot of people that just go in not knowing what they want to do, and that is when the Army kind of decides what they want to do with you.
So plan better.
Yeah.
Read everything.
Yeah. Get somebody else to go in with you. Get a mentor. Reach out.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things I think on a year ago, an episode, there was a guy who's like, I'd like to get involved and help people before they sign for them to understand what they're getting into. And I still think there's a need for that, for people signing up, that you need somebody to help you understand what you're getting into. Not that they take advantage of you, but some recruiters, you just never know.
Exactly. No, I totally agree with you on that. But it also depends on, it's interesting, because I actually went to a recruiting station that had all the different service branches, and I went to the Marines and I asked them, like, how do you get people to become a Marine? And they're like, people don't ask us about bonuses. They just want to become a Marine, And so, right. I mean, and I think that's true. I think there's people that will come in, who have their mindset on that certain armed service branch because of maybe what they saw in a movie, or a grandparent who might have served, or a parent who served. So it all depends.
Is there anything different you would have done on your transitioning, if you're looking back now?
Yeah, I probably would have spent more time. I would have spent more time researching jobs, and trying to find something that was the right fit for me, instead of bouncing from job to job. But every job that I had, I learned something. I did not take it for granted. I made sure that every position that I held, I always learned something and took something away from that. So you're always going to learn something from whatever you do.
Go ahead, Amy. I got my 2 in.
All right. Well, I think it's interesting, because I didn't know you went green to gold. I didn't know that you met Jason at the Mission Continues and Andrew and stuff like that. So I think that's really interesting. And even I think for our group at MVP, how new we all are. Mm-hmm. I feel like, and so my question is asking if maybe you feel the same way, almost as if it's what the VFW used to be, or is for a certain demographic without alcohol. Like, I just feel like our group really leans in on each other. And I like that. It's so different than any other military service organization that I've been a part of.
No, I agree. I really do. I agree with you on that. It's a much younger audience, but at the same time, it still has the same effect. I mean, the workout, because and I don't know if you know this, Ed, but with MVP, it was founded by Jay Glazer and Nate Boyer. Nate Boyer was a former NFL player, but he was also a Special Forces Green Beret. Jay Glazer, he's a Fox News sports pundit. But yeah, okay. So when they started this, the whole thing was you have a 30-minute workout that you do and then an hour huddle afterwards where you're just kind of talking. And that huddle, that light workout really does a lot because it's kind of brings back when you're in the military or if you're in sports, because you're in the suck together. Like you're working out together, you're doing this activity together, and then you're talking, and then when it's done, you're talking about what's going on in your life, good, bad, and different. And it allows people to be vulnerable and be in a safe space. I think that's what's most important. Like it's a space where we can all come together. We're not trying to one up each other. We're just trying to get whatever's on our chest off and have people be empathetic about it.
I think we're also really good about, and I think you're really good about sharing the tools that work for, like sharing the tools that work for me, and you share the tools that work for you. And so the person who posed the issue or the problem hears multiple ways to go about in a healthier manner of dealing with it.
No, I agree with it. And it's never a, I would do this, or if I were you, I would do this. It's what I did, because that's what you use to get over that hump. And what you did may not be as effective for that other person, but at least they heard what you did, and they can maybe take a little bit of that and a little bit from another person and use that to get over whatever obstacle they may be dealing with.
In case people want to go there.
Yeah.
There you go. It's on the screen.
BetsonPlayers.org, yes.
Huh?
No, I was saying BetsonPlayers.org.
Yep, that's what it was. Yeah. It's easy. I just went and looked it up, cut and pasted, and made a banner. It's pretty easy. That technology stuff.
Yep.
But back to your VFW. I think the VFW was because, that was older wars, right? I mean, that's other conflicts, and we hadn't had a major conflict since, 70s, and then we had the Iraq in 1990, and so most of those people are much younger, and they don't relate a lot to the older people at some of these organizations. And I'm not knocking it, just I could understand, right? So it's like when I was looking for a service organization, and I went to the Lions Club, and the average age was like 65, and then I went to Rotary, and the average age was like 47. It was a little bit better. I could see where things that happen in one place wouldn't relate to other people in other places. So I could see how this would work better for the younger guys. And I just mean the more recent people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's all right.
I was going to say, I know we do have some Vietnam. We have some Vietnam veterans in our group as well. And like I said, and I agree with you, like I'm not knocking the VFW, American Legion, any other veteran service organization. But I think what MVP has is just a little bit different. It really is we're in this together, and that's why the bond is so strong. Like everybody, I think pretty much everybody has each other's number. So if we know enough about each other, so if we don't hear from somebody, we know to do a check-in just to make sure that they're okay.
Yeah. Whatever works for you is where you should go.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's why it's good to have many of these different type of organizations, because it's not one size fits all. So
exactly. Yep.
Right. All right. Amy, anything else you want to add today or ask Elliott before we go?
No, I just want to thank you for your service, Elliott, and for your time today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And we don't let Amy around the buttons, because she would have canceled us right now. We wouldn't be able to say goodbye. I get to pick on her.
She would have hit the mute button on me a couple times.
She would have hit the in broadcast already. Yeah, she was like, we're out of here. That's not what I said, Amy. All right, Elliott, thank you so much for being here. Anything else you want to add? Right. I mean,
yeah, I just want to say, if anybody who's watching, there's MVP organizations across the nation. Just as Ed had put up the banner, anybody's watching this, if you're looking for a different type of group of a veterans service organization, MVP is a good option. And if you're looking to do volunteer work with other veterans, the Mission Continues is also a nationwide service as well.
Right. And the only thing I looked at vets and players, they don't have it everywhere, right? In California, it's in LA, which is like 600 miles.
But we do offer virtual and in person.
Yep.
Yeah. So there is that option. So if individuals aren't in a location where there is an in-person, you can always call in and do it virtually. We do have a few people, because Washington is a big state. We do have a few people across the state that can't make it into Written. So though, that's my dog. Sorry. But they'll dial in virtually, and it still offers the same effect, because you still have people who come on and they just talk about what's going on.
I'm stuck on your dial in comment.
Yeah. Zoom. People have the Zoom link.
People haven't dialed in a long time.
You're not tracking? You're not tracking like a VCR?
Yeah, put that on tape for me, will you?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yes, All right. Hey, Elliott, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and everything about, and then also helping us understand veterans. I'm sorry, I can't even talk today. Merging vets and players. There we go. It'd come out eventually. It's too much talking today. All right, and thank you, and everybody else. If you like what we do here, just follow and subscribe and let us know. And if you don't like what we do here, you can tell us that too. All right. And again, we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.